I am Joanne, and I am your facilitator for Why They Stay. It's the results of a qualitative study of commitment and retention in long-term care. You'll notice that we dispense with the nonsense of a formal introduction. The lady who was supposed to introduce me is back here, and she's got better things to do. And most of you don't care where I've been. You care whether or not I have anything worthwhile to say today. Okay? And I'm going to do my best. I want to get started by asking you to think seriously and begin to engage around the question of why people stay. So everybody stand up for a minute, please. Everybody stand up. This is my little heart. This is my little heart. When you get the heart, you're going to quickly tell us why you think people might stay in long-term care. Okay? And then you're going to very quickly toss it to someone else. We don't want a sermon. We just want a quick statement. Okay? And you're going to toss it to somebody besides me. Oh, this is violent this morning. Okay? You lost the heart? Somebody help her find my heart. My poor little heart. Passion we heard so far. Compassion. Toss it, quick. People. They feel valued. They love what they do. Well, that was good. Say that again? Important work. Nobody wants to catch it. Uh-huh. What'd you say? Dedication. Uh-huh. It can come from anywhere. Look alive. Yes. It's fulfilling work. One more person, quick. Love, okay? Love, and you can hold my heart, okay? You'll be the keeper of the heart until the next time we need it, okay? You know, all of those are factors for why people stay. Those are all factors in why people stay, but there's actually more. There are some systemic and some organizational reasons that people choose to stay. And our session today is going to focus on helping you understand the organizational context that enables people to stay and to really commit to the long-term care profession. The work that I've done over the last year and a half on my dissertation was a qualitative study of a company called Opus Management Resources, which is based down in Tampa. They have 10 SNFs throughout the state of Florida, and they have far better than average retention numbers in most of their facilities, and that's why I selected them. The other reason that I selected them is because I think that we spend too much time talking about why people leave, and that if we had an appreciative focus and spent some time figuring out what it is that makes people stay, that in changing the conversation, we could also change the experience. And when I say change the experience, I mean change the experience for that frail little person who's in the bed, change the experience for that CNA or that nursing assistant who is changing their depends, change the experience for the physicians, for the nurses, for our stockholders, for our board members. We could change the experience all the way around in long-term care if we decided to shift our focus to really understand why people stay. Let me just give you a quick rundown of how our time together is going to go. Everybody has either a handout or a device near them. I don't read from the handout. We don't go through the handout verbatim. It's a tool for you to use in the session and after the session. So you need to know that on the front end, but it is a tool for you to use. And the first page of the handout simply, I lost my clicker. I don't know where I put it. Has anybody seen the clicker? The advancer? Ah, thank you. The first page of the handout simply describes the study in probably more detail than you would care to know. But the rationale for the research is really simple. It was to understand what builds healthy commitment and what builds healthy retention. Because all commitment and all retention are not healthy, okay? All commitment and all retention are not healthy. When I talk about healthy commitment and healthy retention, it's the people who are there for the reasons that you cited, passion and compassion, because they love the work, because they recognize that it's important work. They're not just there because nobody else would hire them. Okay? It's kind of like dating and marriage. You know how sometimes you date a person for a really long time because you just don't feel like going back on Match.com? Yeah. Oh, some of you know what I'm talking about. Others of you wish you knew, okay? So it really is like that. It's about creating a healthy environment and creating an environment where people really want to commit. The other rationale for the research is because I really believed that there were these silent voices of people who are happy doing their work, happy being in long-term care, and I thought that it was important to give ear to the silent voices. I thought that that was a really important piece. So, 3 objectives, and they're on your handout. To identify the organizational factors that compel commitment and retention, and then to provide a comprehensive model for an organization that is really serious about having a high level of retention, and then to provide some specific tools and some specific strategies that you as leaders can use in your organization. So the question was really, why are you here? Why have you stayed? And it was neat because I got to talk to 39 different people, ranging from nurses and CNAs to housekeepers and laundry staff to administrators. So I got to talk to lots of different people and hear lots of different voices. And the method was interviews, and the findings are what we're going to be discussing in just a little bit. If you will join me in flipping to the second page of your handout. Second page of your handout. You've got to share. They were available online, and if you didn't print one, you can after the session, okay? I have a request for you. Does everybody know what an ADD is? ADD? It's an attention distracting device. Those of you who are texting, tweeting, Facebooking, cut it out. Could you please do me and the people around you the courtesy of being fully present with us today? One of the things that came out in this study is this whole notion of presence and how important it is. So if you could please divorce yourself from your ADD for just this hour. God will not call you for advice during this session, I promise you. If you could do that, I would really appreciate it. So, want to talk about the themes that came out through the research, the themes. And there were 4 primary ones that really undergirded the findings. The first one is that this organization makes me feel good. This organization inspires positive feelings. That was the first theme that came out. And it came out almost unanimously in the 39 interviews, so it was really powerful. The second one is the behavior of leadership. I did not go into this research looking for leadership stuff. I just really wanted to know what people were going to say. And I was struck by the fact that transformational leadership exists at the center level in these 10 centers. And I was struck by how much people cited specific things that leaders in their organization did to, with, and for them. There was a resounding theme about being known. I remember sitting and talking with one of the CNAs, and she says, "You know, he knows my name." And I'm like, "Well, who knows your name?" She says, "The new administrator, he already knows my name." And I thought, well, shouldn't he? Shouldn't he? And that made me really think about, how do leaders behave on a daily basis? What are the things that we do that connect us to people, really connect us to people? And what are the things that we do that separate us from people as leaders? So the next of the themes was this sense of connectedness. And the connectedness was not just to one another as coworkers, but connectedness to the patients, residents, customers, whatever you happen to call them in your facility, and to their families. A sense of connectedness to the larger community. So that sense of connectedness was really important. And then the last one was opportunities for growth and recognition. Opportunities to learn, opportunities to try different positions, and to try different work. So we are going to actually do some work with those 4 themes. I would like for you to take a second and just make a star next to the one that floats your boat the most, okay? After you have made that star, there are 2 things that I'd like for you to consider. The first one is how. How in the world can I make more of that the norm in my organization? Okay? How in the world can I make more of that the norm in my organization? And then the second thing is the benefit or the win. So what's my expectation if I make more of that the norm in my organization? What's the benefit? What's the win? I'm going to give you about 2.5 minutes to do that. And then we're going to do some work with that. All right. Here is what I'm going to ask you to do. I'd like for you to find a partner very quickly, somebody at your table. If you're at an odd number table, there's another odd number person somewhere near you. If you would join them and let them be your partner, that would be great. And you're going to share your responses. Each of you has the opportunity to tell the other what you identified, your how, and the anticipated benefit. And then we'll talk about it. Okay? And you've got about 3 minutes, about 1.5 minutes per person. Let's talk about it. What'd you pick? What's the theme that turned you on that you'd like to see more of? Anybody? Absolutely, positively anybody. How about you in the red shirt smiling at me?
I think connectedness.
Okay, so why?
I should have spent forever to say that first. I try to spend a lot of time with the staff, lunch, breaks, whatever, trying to build like a family facility so they won't want to leave, they'll want to stay.
Okay, and what do you see as the benefit besides them wanting to stay?
Just you should treat family better, and we have long-term employees that take care of the people.
And that's a really important piece. Whatever you do to them is what they do to them when nobody's watching. So if you are mean or nasty, sullen or surly, trust me, when nobody else is in the room with the poor little Mrs. Jones, that's what they are too. So it trickles down. It really, really, really trickles down. Somebody else, what'd you pick? Why'd you pick it? The lady in the back with the pretty white hair who was here last year. I'm sorry, I forgot your name. It's only been a year.
It's been a year. I chose opportunities for growth recognition.
Okay.
And I put it down to my direct care staff, and I would assign them to performance improvement projects. Buy into the project, increased learning, and additional communication.
Okay. And the other benefit besides learning and communication, what else do you see as another benefit from that? Say that again. Sue has one for you. The outcomes are different. The outcomes are improved. You want her on your team next time, don't you? I can vouch for her. Do you want to go next, Sue?
Well, I went with the opportunities for growth and recognition as well, and I was looking at it as a way to support the education and growth of your staff, and we were talking about it, whether or not you can actually elevate somebody to a different position may not be able to happen, but as with successful projects or education, you can either recognize them as a group on a month or individually, or, you know, but again, you're going to have some opportunities for skills.
Enhanced skills and enhanced outcomes. And again, those are the things that engender people to an organization. They stay because they have opportunities to grow. I heard the most delightful story when I was doing the research from a woman who had been a CNA in the facility for upwards of 20-some years. And a new administrator came in and said to her, after he had watched her for a while, "You're going to be our ambassador with the families. When I have like tough situations with the families, I'm going to assign it to you." And when she was telling me this story, she started crying. And she says, "You have no idea what it meant to me that he saw something in me." She said, so she got additional training in customer service and customer satisfaction. And when she told the story, I mean, you could feel it. You could feel the excitement. You could feel the pride. And she said to me at the end of the interview, "Well, I'm never going to leave here." And she's in her late 50s. She says, "I'm just going to keep on working here, and then I'll volunteer, and then I'll be a resident. I'll be a customer here. I'm never going to leave." And those are the kinds of stories, that's the kind of joy that we want to inspire. I asked you to look at these themes and to begin to think about them seriously, because I really believe that when leaders take this seriously and start thinking about the how and then the benefit for the organization, that we can create these kinds of positive retention experiences. I really believe that. I don't think that this company is just a fluke. I believe that they have done some very focused, thoughtful work that has paid off in spades, but that we can all do that if we decide that we want to. I want to give you some tools to help you do just that. The first thing is we've got to understand what commitment really is. And this is somewhere in your handouts, but I want to talk about it. The first thing that commitment is, theoretically, is a real belief in what we're doing. A real belief in and an acceptance of the organization, its mission, its goals, and its values. It's really believing in what we stand for. And I believe it goes deeper than that. I believe that it's also a belief in the nobility of the long-term care profession. I think that this is a really noble profession. I think that this is a really important profession. I say frequently that when people leave here, they're going to meet their God, and you want them to have a good report about you. So it's really important to think about, what are you doing to these people at the end of their days? You know, it really is important to think that through. So it's a belief in the organization, its values, and in the nobility and the worth of the long-term care profession. The nobility and the worth. Second thing that organizational commitment is, it is a willingness to exert effort on behalf of the organization. One of the things that really struck me in this research was nobody complained about their wages. Not one person complained about their wages. And it's interesting because when you read a lot of the literature on retention or the lack thereof, they talk about, oh, you know, we're all beat down because we don't make any money because we're in long-term care, and the lower down you are on the food chain, the less you make, and that's why they hate us. Not so. These people were willing to work hard for this organization because it had meaning and value to them. So that willingness to exert oneself on behalf of the organization is really an important factor in creating commitment. And then the last piece of commitment is a sincere desire to remain in the organization. A sincere desire to want to continue to be a part of that organization because of what it means to you as an individual. It's important that we understand what commitment is so that we can create it, so that we really understand the factors that go into it so that we can create it. There are actually three types of commitment. Affective is what we're striving for. That is, I am here because this is where I want to be. This is where I have decided that I want to be. The next type of commitment is continuance, and that's because I couldn't find a better bet than this one. There's a whole thing called the side bet theory, and people have said, you know what, this is the best bet I have, so I'm just going to stay. And then the next type of commitment is normative. And I'm staying because I feel like I ought to, I should, that kind of commitment. But what we really want is to instill in long-term care employees across the board, whether it's a CEO or a housekeeper, the desire, that affective commitment, the real desire to be there, because we get different results from that. And then once we have instilled that, I want to go back to the second of the findings. There is specific leadership behavior that we're looking for, very specific leadership behavior. And I want to begin to talk a little bit about this whole notion of transformational leadership, because if we can change the numbers around retention and commitment, what we're creating is a transformation in the long-term care profession. That is what we will be creating. So I want to move very quickly into a discussion of transformational leadership. Who's got my heart? Who's got my heart? Okay? So, what would you like to transform in? I know I'm the worst catcher in town. What would you like to transform in the long-term care profession? What would you like to transform in the long-term care profession? My gosh, he's like looking right at me, making great eye contact. I throw him the heart and he drops it. Okay, this is like my dating life, okay? Ay, ay, ay. Ay, 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 this is way too familiar. So what do you want to transform? Can't think of anything. You got to think of something. Because if we are in a leadership role and we don't have something that we want to transform, we got a problem. Toss it to Nancy right here. That's Nancy. Woohoo! What do you want to transform?
I would like to transform long-term care to be seen as an equivalent of any other part of the healthcare system.
What would that mean, Nancy? What would that look like?
It would look like we would be sitting at the table providing, people would see us as providing the level of care that we aspire to provide. They would see our staff as equal professional clinicians, etc. And we would be at the table of all the key decisions in terms of healthcare in the continuum.
All right, somebody else. What do you want to transform? Nancy, pick somebody. That's okay. Yeah, that is a big one, but we can do it. Somebody else. I think this guy right here with the bald head and the nice beard. Him. Pretty pink shirt. Woo! All right.
I would like to transform, you know, you talk to a lot of people in the community and they think that you go to a nursing home for end of life. And it's hard to sell that, no, I'm here for rehabilitation too, to get you back home. And that's what I would like to transform.
So that people see the full picture, that it's beyond the end of life care. And you get to pick somebody else who can catch. Pick somebody who can catch.
I would like, kind of like you said, to know there's more. We've had a lot of people come to the nursing home and say, you know, I'm coming here to die. We had a lady recently come in to say she was coming in to die. She came from home and she said she didn't have time because we're now doing cooking, we're doing activities.
She didn't have time to die.
She didn't have time to die.
Here in the way.
So I want people to know that we're more than, you know, we changed their life for the better. It's not, you know, they're not at a home alone anymore. They have a new family. So.
Thank you. You can hold the heart. In order for us to create transformations in the long-term care organization, we have to first transform ourselves into the kinds of leaders who A, have a vision of something different, and then B, are willing to put our back into it and really work to be that in the organization. We're going to spend a little time looking at this whole idea of transformational leadership. Transformational leadership. And it is actually on this page, the page that looks like this. And I want to talk a little bit about what it is, what it means, and then you're going to have the opportunity to do a quiz. So, first thing that you have to know is that there are 4 components of transformational leadership. The first one is something called idealized influence. Idealized influence. And this is when we get people to view us, the leader, as credible and competent. It's important to understand that just because you occupy a leadership role does not mean that you are viewed as credible or competent. Somebody said that's true. Yeah. It doesn't mean that. It does not mean that. There is some work that has to be done. There is a knowledge base that has to be present in order for you to be able to have this idealized influence. So that credibility and that competence are critical, really critical. People have to know that you actually know what you're doing, that you actually know what you're doing. They have to believe that you have at least the basic skills to be in the role. How many of us have worked for people who you wondered, now how did she get that job? Or how did he get that job? Yeah, because I'm a consultant, I go into lots of organizations all over the place, and I spend a lot of time texting my sisters. I don't know who this person knew. I don't know if his daddy owned the company. I don't know if her mother owns the company. You know, there are lots of people like that, unfortunately, in the work world. But in order for us to be transformational leaders, we've got to embody that idealized influence. The second thing is something called inspirational motivation. Inspirational motivation. And this is when we are able to connect people to the noble purposes of long-term care. In the organization that I used for my study, they use a device called mission stories for inspirational motivation. When administrators, senior leaders in the organization open meetings, they ask people to tell a mission story. And a mission story is a very specific targeted device that is used to raise the level of motivation. People are asked to tell where they've seen the mission alive, how they've seen their coworkers demonstrate the mission, what the mission means to them. And that serves an important purpose. It focuses people on the noble objective of long-term care. More importantly, it focuses people on the mission that drives this particular organization. So inspirational motivation is the second one. The third one is intellectual stimulation. So for those of you who were talking about the need for raising the bar on education, for growth, and those kinds of opportunities, that is what intellectual stimulation is really all about. It's creating learners at every level. Learners at every level. And creating learners who learn both formally and informally. And creating opportunities for ongoing learning, opportunities for ongoing growth. Real important piece here is that it doesn't matter what role you occupy in the long-term care organization, there should be opportunities for you to learn and for you to grow. And just doing the mandated or the required training doesn't get it. And people want a lot more than that. This particular organization that I used for the study has a whole comprehensive approach to employee development that includes everyone from the CEO to the housekeepers. There is a learning path for everyone in the organization. And it's not an optional learning path. This particular CEO takes learning very seriously and has made it an organizational priority. So learning isn't something that you might do or you might not. If you're going to stay and live this organization's mission, you're going to learn. And one of the key components of their mission is continuous learning and continuous improvement. So this idea of intellectual stimulation is a critical piece of transformational leadership. And then the fourth component is individualized consideration. Really understanding that we're dealing with human beings. We're dealing with human beings. So respecting their individuality and respecting their humanness. Really understanding that. Understanding that as popular as it is to say, oh, just leave your problems at the door. I leave my problems at the door. We don't. So understanding that people bring their whole selves in. Everybody remember when you did the hokey pokey and you had to put your whole self in? People bring their whole selves and they hokey pokey around the workplace every day. So we've got to be cognizant of that, recognize that, and allow space for that in the work environment, to really recognize that. So we're going to do a little work on transformational leadership. You have a quiz somewhere near you. If you have the handout, you have it on the handout. If you don't have the handout and you have your little device, you have it on your device. Now here's how we're going to do this quiz. You either answer yes or no. There's no maybe. If you have all yeses, you're delusional. And we're going to get a psych referral for you, okay? I'd like for you to read the statement and answer candidly based on what is your normal behavior, not based on your fantasy behavior, okay? I'm going to give you about 2 minutes to do the quiz, and then I'll tell you what we're going to do with it after that. All right, so if you turn to the next page of your handout, there is a little guide. So each of those statements corresponded with an element of transformational leadership or its opposite, which is transactional leadership, which since we only have an hour, I'm not getting into all that transactional stuff, okay? So now what I'd like for you to do is to select any one of those statements that is of interest to you in terms of your own development. So any one of those statements that interests you for your own development, and then you'll see where it lines up in terms of whether it's idealized influence, inspirational motivation, where it lines up. And then after you have done that, I'd like for you to identify 3 action items that you are actually willing to take. Not to think about, not to pray about, but to actually do, okay? To further your objective related to that statement, okay? So I'll give you a quick example. Let's say that you picked, my own professional development is a priority that I attend to consistently as something that you really want to focus on. So your first action item might be to come up with your own individual development plan. Your second action item might be to get a coach. Your third action item might be to commit to serving on an American Healthcare Association committee. Okay? Everybody got where we're going with this? But they're things that you will actually do. Okay? And you've got about a minute, maybe a minute and a half to do that. And then we're going to talk about it. And someone just asked a really important question. She said, am I supposed to find one that I said yes to or one that I said no to? It's up to you. Whatever floats your boat. So that same partner that you had a couple minutes ago, you're going to share the one statement that you're working on and your one action item with them, and then vice versa. Same partner you had a couple minutes ago, you're going to tell them what your one statement is, and you're going to share one of your action items with them. Okay? And you got about a minute. Time is officially up. It's over. You can work on it with your partner during lunch. All right. So anybody want to volunteer? Or do I got to pick somebody? My guy with the blue shirt. Yes. You. Yay!
I picked number 15, which is disciplinary action, which my answer was no. Education.
You picked disciplinary action. Say that again. I was having trouble here.
Performance is best improved with disciplinary action.
Okay, what did you come up
The
with?
answer is no, and I went with education first, personal improvement plans, and recognition.
Education, personal improvement plans, and recognition over firm disciplinary action. Okay? Somebody else, what'd you pick? What are you going to work on? Somebody else. Yes. I heard a, yes.
So mine was coaching is a tool I consistently use to enhance performance. And so I put, my answer was, I'm not sure. And so because I said I need to first learn about what the difference between coaching, teaching, and mentoring, and understand those differences, and then identify what I need to build in my skill set, and then get that coach or mentor, whatever it is that I need to do. And then we were talking, and one of the, because of the work that I do, and how is, if I call it coaching, how would that be received? That terminology by someone else, and would they understand it?
Okay, so you're going to focus on coaching, learning and understanding what it is, and then learning and understanding how it's received, and understanding the distinction between coaching, counseling, mentoring, all that other stuff, and the skill sets that you need. If you give me your card afterwards, I have a ton of resources on coaching. I'm your new best friend, okay. Okay. Write coaching on the back. We are now matched, okay? I don't want to be matched with you. I want to be matched with someone about this tall, the other gender. Oh, well, maybe I do. I'll take that back. Oh, dear. So, moving on from our match here. Somebody else, what are you going to be working on? Gentleman in the corner there.
I said my own professional development's a priority, and
what does that look like? What are your action steps?
To attend more educational seminars and then use the information that I've obtained at them.
Oh my Lord, that is so important.
Because
the attendance is only 25%. It is what you do with it after the fact, and your intentionality and your consciousness about using it. So thank you.
I go to plenty, and I bring it home and I put it in the drawer.
Yeah.
Or to the office, throw it in a file, and don't look at it for a long time.
Yeah.
Next thing, just read, study, and live long-term care and ways to improve. Start reading the periodicals, the McKnights, the providers, all that, and focus more on them. Because again, I always feel like I don't have time for it. I throw it aside. I'll skim it real quick, but that's it. And focus on staff morale and start putting myself aside. Being younger in this field, I keep thinking, all right, I got to focus on me. What can I do? I want us to succeed, have a great survey. I need to start focusing more on.
That's not because you're young, it's because you're a guy. I'm sorry. I couldn't resist. You've got a sense of humor, haven't you?
We're not going to be a match No, but like you said, build other people up more and try to focus on their strengths and their weaknesses and work on that.
Excellent.
Which will in turn help me in the end because we're building the team up.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. So, as we think about our own development, there's a reason. The reason is that we actually want to embody the principles of transformational leadership. And transformational leadership happens when leaders do some specific things. It happens when they broaden and raise the interest of employees. When they broaden and raise the interest of employees. When they help employees to focus on the nobility of this profession. It happens when they build an awareness, a real awareness, and an acceptance of the purpose and the mission of the organization or the group. It happens when we are able to move employees from self-interest to group interest. But none of that can happen unless we have first done the development on the individual level. None of that can happen. I want to move to the framework for improving retention and commitment in long-term care. There are 8 practical steps, and they are on the page of your handout that looks like this, okay? And we're going to walk through them. The first one is really beginning with a mission or a vision that anchors the organization. It really helps us to know who we are and how we are. So that's the first step, is having that in place. And it doesn't have to be long, lofty, and flowery. It just has to be meaningful, okay? Got to be meaningful. But that is the first step. Second thing is developing comprehensive strategies to align services, systems, practices, processes, and people with that stated mission or vision. So we have to create meaningful alignment, meaningful alignment. And when we don't create alignment, that's when the organizational schizophrenia comes into place. That's when we talk the talk about phenomenal service and are constantly understaffed. You can't do that. You absolutely positively can't do that. You've got to be truthful in this and create meaningful alignment. Next thing is we're responsible for creating an organizational communication plan that keeps the focus on the activities that are required to advance the mission, the vision, and the strategy of the organization. So the communication plan includes things like our staff meetings. How are they structured? It includes things like using electronic communication. The organization that I used for my dissertation uses something called the Pulse, which is a monthly electronic communication that goes out from the CEO to everybody in the field, where she talks about what's important about the mission, what important things they're doing as an organization, and where she inspires them around long-term care issues. Fourth thing is to consistently assess climate and culture. Doing focus groups to find out what people are experiencing in the organization. Understanding that if you as a leader are not listening, if you're always talking, you can't know what's really going on in the organization. So really taking the time to do thorough and comprehensive assessments of climate and culture, to hear from people, to take the time to actually hear from people. That's a critical piece. Instituting measures that regularly assess a range of outcomes, not just physical care or clinical care outcomes, to assess outcomes in terms of team member or staff satisfaction, to assess outcomes in terms of what does the family experience when they're here? How do they feel about coming through the doors? To assess the experience that our short-term rehab people have versus our long-term care residents or patients, to really get constant assessment. And then it's not just about gathering the data, we've got to feed it back to the care providers, because gathering the data is just gathering the data. What are you going to do with it? How are you going to use what you have collected to make a difference in the organization? A very funny thing happened recently. Just this last week, I got a call from someone in a client site, and when I tell you the story, you'll understand why I can't tell you who the client is. So they have started collecting data as suggested, but one of the directors said, now look, for years we've been collecting this data, but now they got this new consultant chick, and she says we got to do something with it. So since I know and you know that you don't want to be like having meetings, you don't want any more meetings, right? So everybody, let's just all agree on how we're going to report on this new form. How damaging was that? How damaging was that to the morale of the organization and to the people who actually might have wanted to have voice? They might have had something good to say. So we've got to really think about how we're gathering data, what we're going to do with it, and who we're sending out to be the emissary to collect the data. Who are we sending out to be the emissary? So the next piece in this comprehensive approach is to develop a comprehensive approach to human capital development. And this includes education for all levels of employees, all levels of employees. Because you've got VP or SVP or EVP after your name, that is not a pass on no more learning. That really is, to me, a calling to higher learning and higher application. So this comprehensive plan really needs to address the developmental needs of all levels of staff, no matter what position they occupy. But there's also a level of accountability that has to go on there. There has to be a structure in place for transfer. We've got to be able to transfer what we did in the classroom, in a workshop, into the work environment for the betterment of the work environment. Having lots and lots of classes and having lots and lots of training is pointless if I don't have anywhere to put it. If I don't have someplace to use it, what am I going for? What am I doing that for? Next thing is instituting employee engagement practices that create camaraderie and esprit de corps. Really creating ways, God bless you, to create collaboration so that people can have the opportunity to collaborate with one another, to collaborate with managers, to collaborate with leaders, but finding ways to engage employees, but also engaging them in fun. Making sure that there are lots of opportunities in the workplace for people to have a good time. Creating opportunities for people to have fun. This is serious business, but that does not mean that it can't be fun. It's serious, but it doesn't mean that it can't be fun. And then the last of the action plans is to institute measures that really monitor and feedback. What did we learn from our survey? What did we learn from not getting the gold award? What did we learn from getting the silver award? But feeding that information back into the system so that everybody in the organization is aware of where and how we are positioned in the long-term care profession, so that they understand how we position next to our competition, so that they understand how we are positioned this year as opposed to where we were positioned last year. As we begin to think about how do we really create commitment, how do we really create commitment, the first and I believe the most important piece of that equation is in understanding my leadership. Understanding what is it that I am doing that is an intentional ask or an intentional invitation for people to bring their best selves into the work environment. That is where it really begins. It begins with me focusing on my own development and then analyzing or dissecting the organization to make sure that it is a place where people can flourish and where they can grow. One of the things that was the most striking about this study for me was the amount of joy that the people had. They were picked randomly, so it's not like somebody went around and just picked the happy people. They were, kind of picked off of an Excel spreadsheet. I just kind of took a highlighter and highlighted people and sent them the invitation. But it struck me how happy they were to be a part of long-term care and how happy they were to be a part of that particular organization. So my question for you as leaders in this profession is, are you still happy to be here? Yeah. Because if you're not still happy to be here, that is poison that you're spreading in the organization. So if you're not still happy to be here, you got to get some happy pills from somewhere so that you can regain the joy that you started your career and your profession with. Those of you who are interested in the background research, if you leave me a little note on a card, I'm happy to send you all the stuff related to this. Thank you for coming. Thank you for wanting to hear about the research.